This, my friends, is an SSD, or a solid state drive. SSDs are becoming very popular in today's systems, and certainly something we want to talk about. Now, before we go any further, what I want you to do is take a look at these two drives here. On your left is an old school hard drive, rotational media. On your right is an SSD. First and foremost, look at those interfaces. It's just good old SATA. So with nothing else involved, for me to install this drive is just like installing any other drive. It's a SATA drive. You plug it in, you get in your system, make sure your system sees it, go into your operating system and partition and format it. You just treat it like a regular hard drive. And that's a problem. You see, the problem we have here is that an SSD from a technology standpoint is really more like RAM than a traditional hard drive. There's no spinning rotors in here or anything like this. It's just big banks of chips ready to do whatever they need to do. And they can do a lot of things that are a lot better than a regular hard drive. I mean, let's just use speed as an example. With an old school hard drive, we're going to be maxing out at arguably around 500 megabytes per second. This guy here is going to go better than a gigabyte per second, and that's moving up faster and faster all the time. Tech's getting big arguments about how fast things are. Trust me when I tell you, this SSD is a lot faster than an old school hard drive. So the problem we have here is that using the old school AHCI drivers to talk to this new technology was just a mistake. And the hard drive industry recognized that. And what they did is they basically said, all right, we're going to redo it all from scratch, and came out with a new technology called NVMe. The non-volatile memory host controller interface specification, just say NVMe, will ya, is a standard that is designed from the ground up to talk to SSDs. Now, NVMe has a lot of neat features. Well, neat feature number one is that it's designed to run on the PCIe bus itself. So right there you get a whole lot of speed increase. Secondly, NVMe takes advantage of all kinds of RAM-y aspects of SSD to get your system to run faster. Let me just give you one example. In another episode, we talk about native command queuing. And in that episode, we talk about how we can talk to one drive, and then that drive can queue up a bunch of commands in line and in the order that it needs it. In this type of situation with these old SATA drives, you basically only have one queue. Imagine a world where you have 65,536 queues. And that's part of the beauty of NVMe. So the nice part is if you've got this all plugged in right, it all automatically works for you. So the trick is you got to make sure you've got the parts. So number one, you're going to need an operating system that supports NVMe, and pretty much all the modern operating systems do. Secondly, you're going to have a motherboard that supports NVMe. And third, you're going to have an SSD that is also NVMe, because older SSDs are not NVMe. They could be SATA. So let's talk about how we plug in NVMe devices, because we can't use a regular SATA connection anymore. We need something that can support all of this new cool speed and language and everything. So the first and easiest way to do this is you can just buy a card that is a PCI Express card, and you can just take this card, snap it into your system, and off you go. Now, the NVMe standard realized that they're going to have to come up with specialized connections. I just happen to have a motherboard right here that has those two connections in them. So let's take a look. First, and it's right here, all three of these connectors right here is SATA Express. Now, it looks like two SATAs and a little dingle hopper there on the end, but really all three of those together is a SATA Express connector, and it has a very unique connector, and it's not super popular. I don't know what's going to happen with SATA Express, but it is out there. Much more popular is M.2. M.2, this is a hard drive, and it's normally screwed down, but I unscrewed it so I could show you the connector here. Let's see if I can pull this out. There we go. So that's a M.2 connector. So if you're going to be using an NVMe drive, it's probably going to be an M.2 or a SATA Express, or you might be buying an entire card and snapping it in your system. Now, I want to put in one little caveat about both SATA Express and M.2. These were designed to be legacy compatible systems. They were designed to work with not only NVMe drives, but also AHCI token, or what we often say are just SATA drives. And this can be a big problem. Here is an M.2 drive that I purchased recently. It's M.2, but I'm going to see if I can put this down so you guys can see this. Do you see right there? What you're looking at is this particular M.2 drive is actually a SATA drive. So M.2, if you plug in a SATA token SSD, it'll go okay and it'll just start talking SATA. The exact same box with about the same price drive I can get as an NVMe. So you got to be really careful when you're making your purchases, particularly with M.2. They've got a little keying and everything, but when you're looking at a box, it's easy to make that mistake. So if you've got a motherboard that supports NVMe and you want to take advantage of it, make sure that your SSD is NVMe capable. So let's go ahead and install a brand new M.2 drive into my system here. Now I'm going to warn you guys, this is actually pretty dull if you really think about it. It's not that hard to do. First of all, you got to locate the M.2 connector, and well, because I'm a highly expert PC technician, it's right here on this particular system. So I'm going to plug this in. Perfect. And that is a properly installed M.2 drive, ready to go. All right. And that's all you got to do. So I'm plugged in, I'm ready to rock and roll. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start the system up, and what we're going to do is we're going to go into my system setup and make sure my system recognizes that drive. Ta-da! There's my brand new M.2 drive, ready to rock and roll. So we've got that covered. Once my system sees the drive, it's pretty much given that I could go into disk management, or I could go ahead and grab an installation flash memory and start the actual installation process on that particular drive. An M.2 drive, like any SSD, like anything, once you've got it plugged in and recognized by the system, you still need to partition, you still need to format, but that's for a different episode.